On today's episode, we're going to find the hidden blocks to your success.
Your someday starts today. It's time to explore and test the newest science, methods, and trends for creating a life you love with your host, Tanyamfk. Welcome to My Designed Life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Design Life, where we learn and test the latest science, tips, tools, and strategies for you to create your best life every day. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk, and on the My Design Life Show podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Marie Figueres-Kreisinger, more easily known as Tanyamfk. And you are here to learn not only how to create your best life, but how to take the action steps to live it right now. Thank you for showing up. Now, my guest today went from a successful CEO of a multi-million-dollar company to unknowingly suffering from PTSD through various illnesses for 3 years after surviving the Boston Marathon bombing. It wasn't until her frustration, confusion, and curiosity led her to discover the truth of her trauma, stuck energy, and subconscious stories that she was able to begin to peel away the layers, allowing her to release and shift what she had been holding on to. And this is when her illnesses began to disappear, some even overnight. She has now worked with hundreds of individuals, including professional athletes, entrepreneurs, influencers, to enhance their performance and take their business to the next level. Utilizing her decades of study in transpersonal psychology, epigenetics, and Taoist practices, combined with entrepreneurial experience, she helps driven women and leaders remove blocks and limiting beliefs to tap into their inner guidance, rapidly accelerating results and impact. Here today to teach us how to recognize our own limiting beliefs and, more importantly, how to exchange them for triumphs, please welcome intuitive business and global manifestation coach, Cari Rosno. Welcome, Cari.
Welcome to My Designed Life.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction.
It is really amazing to hear your story and how you got to where you are now. And really, I think a reminder of how seemingly, tragic events can open up powerful doors to change and transformation. Mm-hmm. Right? So today I really wanted to dive into the concept of limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, and cycles that keep people stuck. Because while I believe that those words and concepts are fortunately becoming more commonplace in our society, I also see that there's still a disconnection with people that go, well, of course I want great things for myself. I'm not afraid of success or money. I want that. And if I don't have it, it's obviously because it's happening from the outside. So I think that maybe this is a great time for us to maybe start with defining limiting beliefs. Like, what are they really? What is the subconscious programming and the role of traumas and how these things keep us stuck and not living the life we want?
I love that question. I love it because it takes us super deep, super fast, which is exactly where I like to go. Yes. Yeah. So I think the first conversation really is in what is happening in the subconscious mind. What is the subconscious mind? And we hear it conversed about as the unconscious, the subconscious, but really it's the thing that's hidden that we don't have the ability to see, yet runs you 95% of your life. So it's the habit forming. It's my easy explanation, the way you get out of bed. I would almost guarantee the audience, if I said, how do you get out of bed every morning? They could tell me, I get out of bed on this side and I do this and this and this, and it's by habit. There's no choice within that. Well, that's how the subconscious mind runs. And like I say, it's about 95% of where your thoughts are being held. So scientifically, they've proven you have about 60,000 thoughts a day.
Oh, only.
Only, right? Only about 60,000. 85% of those are negative beliefs. And we're aware of around 72 in an 18-hour period, which is crazy. So now let's think about all of the beliefs and programs that are running in our subconscious mind that we don't have an awareness around.
Right.
So where do these things come from? It comes from an entirety of your life. I call them reference points. So as children, we spend between the ages of 2 to 7 in a hypnotic state. You're in hypnosis. So this is where we pick up what love means, how we are to be treated, what our value is, what our worth is. And then think about, as you're navigating life between 2 and 7, how many times we're told, oh, be quiet, don't disrupt, just smile, brush it off, keep going. And then these become the programs that run us as we get older. Now, as an adult, I think that I understand all of my beliefs, and I can understand my limiting beliefs because of what I am consciously aware of. Well, you're consciously aware of about 5% of what's happening.
Right.
5%, right? So mantras and things like that, they work, but only if you know what you are looking to overcome. And because of shame, guilt, inability to look at our own past, because it's the past, I'm over it. The inability to look at that doesn't allow us the opportunity to truly understand who we are, where we came from, why we are what we are in this moment, and how to overcome it.
That is so interesting. So the thing you just said really quickly right there, like, we kind of go, well, it's in the past, that's it, to forget it. Like, that's almost, I would think, some people's healthy approach to it, right? Because we go, oh, well, if you're living in the past, you're dwelling on the past. You're like, no, I've recognized that. I see that it's in the past. I don't have to worry about it anymore. But what you're saying is there's actually something where we should take some time to go back and look at these things.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
100%. That's generally what happens is people will say, oh, I thought I already dealt with that. I thought I've already navigated that. I thought I've already been through that. I've talked about it. And yes, you can do that. You can talk about it. You can address it the once, right? But when we address it, usually we're addressing the anger around it. I'm sad around it. Why am I sad? And not looking for the gold that sits within it. Right?
I'm just gonna go super personal on this right now for a moment, because I just went through something like this. My bio dad was not involved in my life at all. And so growing up, kind of going through the hurt and the pain and those things, and then recognizing that as an adult, like, oh, that's something that's really, bothering me. I need to look at that. I need to deal with that. And then kind of coming to a place of saying, like, okay, like, I'm good. I'm past this. I'm over it. And he has not been in my life, like, at all. So, so here I am. I mean, we're talking, 30 plus years, and I just got word that my bio dad passed away. And again, this is somebody that I don't know at all. So I'm like, well, good journey to you, brother. And so like, but then of course it started to pull out all kinds of other things. And you're like, wow, like, where is this coming from? Like, you feel that since there isn't this like daily recognition or issue or anger that's coming up, that like, oh, you're demanding, you're like, no, I'm past this. But clearly there were some places and things that I hadn't really visited and looked at and reconciled or whatnot. And so it was surprising. And I was very fortunate to have, the people around and mentors and guides to kind of like make sure that I'm dealing with it the right way. But it was surprising. It was really, we think, I think those of us who are doing the work, maybe we're like, we know better. We've been on this inner work path. It's surprising to see that there are other steps, that it's not as quick, or maybe not as quick. Maybe that's not the right way, but it's not, there's a different way maybe that we should be looking at it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, because it can be quick. It is layered. I always tell people that it's layered that. And the way I look at it is, if you watch a movie, right? So you watch a movie for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, I love that movie. And then you continue watching that movie, and 15 times later, I never saw that part. I never got that before. But that's the way that if you look at past experiences or traumas, that's really the way that you navigate through those. You can look at it the first time and you're going to pull off a whole segment of it, right? But you got to go back and look at it again, because now you're going to see it from a little bit different perspective, a little bit different view. And the more you have the ability to do that, the more you pull off the layers of the emotion or the trauma or the anger, the energy that sits around it, in order to get to a place of complete calm. The greatest gift that I believe that we can give ourselves is in the understanding that we are creators. And when I say we are creators, people talk about manifesting as though I want the vision board, and these are all the things that I dream of and what I want in my life. And I say, okay, but what if you already created everything in your life? What if every aspect, every experience, every relationship you have ever had, you have created in order to learn something, in order to gain that gold from that experience? So when you finally have the ability to go back and say, for you, look at that relationship with your dad and say, all right, what is it that having that form of relationship with him had taught me? What could I have learned from that? What gold could I be taking from that, right? And when we have the ability to do that, then we have the ability to disempower that negative side of the experience and bring in all of the beauty, and then finally let it go. But you're right. There's so many times we feel like I've addressed that, I've talked about it, I've navigated through it, and it doesn't always show up in as direct a way as your dad's death. It could show up as an argument with a spouse, and all of a sudden you become triggered, right? You get angry. And so then I say, okay, step back. What made you angry? If you take your husband out of that situation and really look at, what did that hit in me? What's the pain it hit in me that still needs to be healed? And where did that come from? That's when we can really start diving deep and understanding where these limitations are coming from, because they show up in front of you all the time. It just may not be in that direct of a way.
Right, that obvious. And so is this kind of what you mean when I've seen in some of the other things that you've taught about, like bringing awareness to the experience?
Yeah, it's a different kind of an awareness. I mean, we can have the ability to look back in an experience and say, yes, I experienced that. But to really dive deep into it and look at all of the different aspects of it and understand my truth in that moment. So if I have an awareness and I have the ability to go back and see something and honor it because I understand my truth in that moment was different than my truth today. And that is a challenge that we face, because it's so easy as hindsight to go back and say, oh, why would you do that? Why? Oh, what a stupid thing to do. What an idiot. How could you have, right? And you go, oh, wait, whoa, would you ever say that to your best friend? Would you ever say that to your own children? But that's what we do to ourselves because of shame or guilt. And I go, whoa, now let's think about this, because 15 years ago, when that experience happened, you had a completely different truth in that moment. Right. Your beliefs were different. Your understanding of life was different. Everything around you was different. You made the absolute best decision that you could in that moment based on what you understood. So when we can understand that, it allows us to bring more awareness to situations, because it finally allows us to be able to look at them without shaming ourselves out of the past.
Right. And shifting that perspective, like you were saying earlier, to find that the goal, to find those moments, and that sting that perhaps that incident or thing happened no longer holds, because now you go, wow, what an amazing change or opportunity or whatnot.
Yes. And that's really the point we want to get to. We want to get to being able to look back at an experience, at anything that has happened to us, a death of a loved one, a traumatic experience, Boston as example, for me to be able to step back, look at that situation and speak about it without emotion, but with compassion. And I say that because so many times people look back and say, I have no emotion around it. Do you have compassion for it? Or are you numb? Because we will numb ourselves in order to not experience the emotion continuously and think we've dealt with it when really we've just shoved it down. Or can I look at it with a compassion and say, wow, seriously, what an amazing experience, and look at all that it has brought forward to me, what I was able to learn and to navigate through. That's a different way of looking at things. And that's, once we get to that point, then we know we've dealt with it. Then we know I have navigated through that experience and I am beyond that experience and now can completely move forward without it holding on to me any longer.
Right. Yeah, because for those of listeners, if you guys haven't heard or seen Cari before, if you hear her story, I know you've mentioned as you went through that, you kind of, you went through the situation, the bombing that happened, you walked away and literally just kind of walked away and dismissed your experience of like, well, I'm okay. Obviously it could have been worse, comparing around, I'm okay. So I'm not allowed to be affected by it, essentially.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Somebody had it worse. Get up, brush it off. Again, back to childhood, right? Don't let them see you sweat. Get up, brush it off, and just keep moving forward. Because if you just keep moving forward, then everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And in that moment, that voice in my head that said, it's not your story to tell, became like this poignant moment for me in, gosh, it sounded like me, but now I look back and go, really? Was that me, or where did that voice come from? Because these limiting beliefs, this negative chit chat, all of the stuff that's happening in your mind, it may sound like you, but it is not you, right? It's not you.
Powerful. Yeah.
So if you've got this, oh, you're not good enough, or you can't do this, where did that come from? Who
and it
told
was
you that?
almost not good enough. Like, who are you to have feelings about this, right?
Yes.
But I think it's so easy because society will go, well, look at you, you're strong, good girl, right? Like, way to go. You must be tough. Like, we praise that. And it's so interesting because I think something, obviously, that we're all going through in one way or another is this pandemic, and to the different levels, different degrees, and of course it's processed. You know, we've all been in it for a while now, but when it first started, I know for myself, about 6 weeks into it, I'm in Czech Republic, so our borders closed quite early, and so it was a real like, wow, what's happening here? Like, countries are closing. You know, my husband grew up in communism, so he's like, okay, this is like a little crazy feeling. We've seen this before, and so it was. But at the same time, I work from home. I've worked from home since 2015. So it was like, well, my day-to-day hasn't changed so much. I still show up, I work online. You know, my son's not of school age, so that hasn't really changed. We were able to go out to the village, our village house, and stay in a very calm area. There's 15 people in the entire village. So it was like not much change there. Pandemic, schmandemic, nothing really changed there over there. Everything looked the same, and people were still raising their chickens and whatnot. So I really was like, I'm okay. Everything's okay. And then about 6 weeks in, I started noticing that I was feeling batshit crazy. I mean, just like, there's no other way to explain it. I mean, I was frustrated. I was watching so much news, all of those things. And I finally told my husband, I'm like, I think this is getting to me. And it was almost like, and I was so fortunate that he was, you know, like, duh, you know, like, but I didn't feel like it was okay for it to get to me. Like, who am I? You know, I didn't, and it was that same issue. Like, my life hasn't changed significantly. And he's like, but the world around you has, and that needs to be okay. And it was a real rough space to give myself a place to say, it's okay that I don't feel okay right now. It's okay that I'm having issue with this, and just experiencing that and looking at it. And so it just, when you explained that situation of like, well, who am I? You know, there's almost this kind of strength that maybe we're doing the right thing, but we're also denying our experience and the awareness that we can bring to that, and the gold we can obviously find out of that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This pandemic and it brings up a lot in people too. So it's no matter the experience that you're having, whether it's I've lost a job, or my job really hasn't changed, or my kids, I don't know if they're going back to school or not. I mean, it's affecting everyone. It's bringing up issues around security, stability, freedom, independence, the ability to make choice. I mean, you think about all of those things that have seemingly been taken away from us during these times where it's, I can't even walk outside of my house without fear, or having to wear a mask, or, you know, all of these different types of elements. And so to allow that and just, okay, all right, I can see this is the experience that I'm having. And all right, what is it bringing up? Like, what is the thing that's really upsetting within this? And to ask the deeper question without looking at it just from a surface level of, yes, I'm very upset that my kids aren't going back to school, right? Or I have to make this decision. Okay, well, let's sit back and look a little bit deeper underneath, and what is the real rub that sits there? And then that's where we have the ability to find the gold. It's bringing awareness to, getting super curious around it, and then finding the gold that sits within.
You said two really important things there. One, getting below the surface, because we can easily go like, positive thinking, right? Like, well, like my kid, well, they're not in school and that bothers me. Okay, well, we have more family time together, and then try to put the spin on it, right?
Yes.
But you said the two things you said were obviously to go deeper than that and to get really curious about it. And I've heard you say that in your story as well, that a huge change when you were going through the illnesses and going through the PTSD that you didn't even necessarily know was happening was when you started getting curious. And I thought it was such a powerful word that you used, because it wasn't just putting a spin of positivity. It was really starting to go, what is this? Why is this bothering me? What is it about them not being at school worry or the fear? What is that fear? What's underneath? What is it really about, right? That's the digging where we find the gold. It's not the spin of positivity.
Yes.
And I think that's such a huge distinction,
so
right? It's such a very important distinction. Because otherwise we're just fooling ourselves.
Right. And what you do is you kind of like place a blanket over it. I'm going to throw something over the top of this to kind of hide it for a little bit and positive spin myself out of it. And then, like you said, 3 weeks later, something comes up and there it is back at you.
Right.
You're
or
like,
the trigger that throws you off something.
Yes. You're like, oh, but it's great. Everything's going to be good. No. Just allow, right? And that's, I think we don't allow ourselves to have the emotions, like you say, that we need to have in order to be able to truly understand the experiences that we're going through, to the depth that we're going through them, to be able to navigate them in a way that is purely positive and not a facade of positivity.
Right. Positive thinking. Well, so I think we've kind of we went a little around where we've gone through a lot of like how we get to it. We got to dig deeper. We got to do these things, but maybe we pull back just a little bit and go back to kind of the concept at whole, like limiting beliefs. We're saying them. How are we getting them? How do we get here? We all have them. It's kind of a normal, like, it's almost like, I think, do we guess, like, am I someone with limiting beliefs? Or should we all go, they're all somewhere implanted here. We've got them. So maybe we go back there a little bit on kind of the coaching level of how we find these and we recognize these, and then we can go back into fixing them again. Yeah,
absolutely. So, the way to understand, you're right. Everybody has limiting beliefs, period. I don't care who you are, as wonderful as you've got your life and the direction that you're going, you have limiting beliefs. Okay. If you have a manifestation, a dream, a goal, a desire, and you have the ability to see it, perhaps, right? They say visualize and put it on a vision board, but you don't have it. There's a limiting belief. There's something that's getting in the way of that. Now, where we pick these up, we pick them up throughout childhood, throughout adulthood, through every experience that we've had. You will see them in the relationships that you have. So if you've ever had the experience or known somebody who's had the experience, why do I keep getting in the same type of relationship? Why do I keep attracting the same type of person to me? Limiting beliefs. If you are going for a promotion and just can't seem to get there, but you're putting all the work into it, limiting belief. Generally, these will come back at the end of the day to self-worth and the ability to trust yourself. They're going to be layered in with a lot of different things. But when we look at that childhood, and we go back, even if, say, you had the best childhood, you had the most amazing, most loving parents, right? They were just a phenomenal family. But there's one moment when you're 2 years old and you're in your crib and you're crying and nobody comes to get you. Okay. When you're 2 years old, your brain does not process information to say, oh, my mom's on the phone and my dad's not home, right? No, your little tiny brain that doesn't have the ability to process information thinks I've been abandoned.
Right.
I've been abandoned.
People
Nobody
don't
loves
come
me.
when
People
you
don't
need them.
come. Yes,
Right.
exactly. So then that becomes a belief that gets caught in the subconscious mind. And the reason why is because your subconscious mind is there to keep you from pain and to find pleasure. That's a painful experience. Okay. Or it's the way you pick up love, right? Oh, my family loves me, but only if, right? Only if I'm crying, only if I'm sick. Perhaps you had both parents working and you were a latchkey kid. And so you didn't have a lot of time with your family, but if you were homesick, somebody was home with you, you were nurtured and loved. And so you pick that up as a small child, go, ooh, but if I'm sick, I get all sorts of attention, right? And as an adult, you'd go, why the heck would you do that? Because I'm 4 or 5 years old and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate the world. And I know that you're supposed to be loved, right? The world tells you you're supposed to be loved.
And this is that huge difference between conscious and subconscious. Like, you're not consciously walking around as an adult, like, if I get sick, people will pay attention to me. But that was so imprinted in that subconscious level that there's something that in you knows, like, this is when people get cared for. This is when you get extra attention, or this is when you're supposed to get extra attention, right? So it can manifest even just with the way you act towards others. Perhaps you're extra like lovey and nice and like, oh my goodness, you're so sick. But you're like, why are you making such a big deal? I just have a cold. You're like, because that's how it works. That's that imprint that was on you for so long. And one thing I want to say is I love when you were saying, like, even if you have the perfect, quote unquote, perfect childhood. Yeah. I remember hearing from a speaker one time, they were saying that, someone felt they, who's had a messed up childhood or whatnot, and pretty much everyone raised their hand. Anyone who hasn't. And one gal was like, my parents were great. They were wonderful. They had a perfect relationship. And when they spoke with her more, it turned out that because her parents had such a great relationship, she had such trouble in relationships because she was always trying to come. So it's like, no one gets out unscathed, guys. Like, you're like, okay, so now their perfect relationship made it hard for her to have relationships because it had to look this perfect way. So there's always something there for us to work through, which is part of the human condition. That's what makes us, triumph really by having these issues. So we've gotten these limiting beliefs through the experiences, through imprints that have happened as a child, through ultimately with a very beautiful way of saying this. It's really like a limiting belief is that's just the way it is kind of belief, right? Like, well, that's the way that is. That like wherever you picked that up, that this is how relationships are, this is how things look like at home. And I think you've mentioned in some of your some of your literature and stuff about like institutional beliefs as well. Like that's those type of things as well, right? That societal kind of, this is the way things are supposed to work. So we just come through an upbringing when we're getting all this imprints and impressions as a child that this is how things work. And and that's different for everyone. It is. So we're not all walking around with this imprinted rule book that keeps us from maybe seeing how other things are can happen. Like, I can't succeed this much because this is how much people succeed, or this is how much people like us get to do, right? Yes, exactly. Okay. Exactly. And when you look at that institutional thinking, I mean, that's when prior to Boston, I mean, I had checked all the boxes, right? I'm married, I've got kids, I have the house, I own a company, all of the things. I had checked all the boxes because that's what society told me it was supposed to look like. And then I would wake up and go, every day for the rest of my life, like, this is it. If you ever have that question, it's because my truest desires, I didn't have the ability to see. I didn't have the ability to know and understand what I truly wanted. It's what everybody else around me kind of expected of me. And then we begin to live our lives in that way. So there's so many different ways that these things can come in and at us. And we define ourselves by the standards of other people, the expectations of other people, or we understand our value based on how other people value themselves. Oh, right. So it's kind of like this constant measuring up against everybody else. That's limitation. So if we get to that point, we understand, like, okay, so they're there somewhere. How do we start to recognize if I'm playing devil's advocate here, that, well, this is reality, that is actually how things work, maybe, right? Like, what do you mean? Versus like, no, I'm actually keeping myself limited here. Is there a way for us to tell that difference? So when I tell the people I work with, anytime you say, doesn't everybody believe that? The answer is no. There's your key right there. So that's first. That's a good one. Right? And then second to that is, so anytime there's that question, or anytime there's this, isn't life supposed to be like this? Isn't what success is supposed to be? Anytime that there is a question that keeps you in the place where you currently are, as opposed to opening a path for you to step into something greater, there's a limitation. There's
right? Something. You will see these things manifest themselves. Limiting beliefs will manifest themselves in the words you speak. So there's no such thing as a Freudian slip, by the way. If the words come out of your mouth and you go, I didn't mean that, I go, yes, you did. Think about why. Just ask yourself why. Like, why? Okay, so why did that come out? People will respond back to you with your own limiting beliefs. So if you ever have somebody say to you, well, I don't know that you could do that. Or do you really think that that's possible? That's your own limitation, not theirs. They're reflecting that back to you. The other thing that, and this I always try to hit home with people, it's not necessarily what you say, and it is not how you say it. It is what your energy is communicating into the world. So when I sit down with people, to be able to, not even to work with them, but I have the ability to sit and understand what their energy is communicating and let them know what their limiting beliefs are. We all have the ability to do that. We all have the ability to sit down and understand what somebody else is communicating, even though we're not consciously aware of it. The example there is you walk into a room and you're like, oh my God, my people are in that corner, and stay the heck out of that corner, right? Because you're reading the energy. Yeah. Right. So that's really what's being communicated out. So you want to create awareness around, what do my relationships look like? Because every person in your life is there to serve you in some way. What do the words that I speak truly mean? Why is it that that came out of my mouth? Why did they respond back to me in that way? And this is where we really develop this insatiable curiosity around life. So the more curious we become, the more questions we ask, the more we have the ability to sit in depth and go, why is that? What caused that to happen? Why did I create that? What am I to be getting out of that situation? Then you have the ability to truly understand the limiting beliefs that are sitting within you. If you just consciously try to think about something, you're never going to come up with anything, right? Because your subconscious is like, woo, don't look over here. I keep you distracted.
All this stuff is normal. Don't worry about this.
Right? Don't worry about it.
So it's really like, first, accepting that these are things we all have, right? So if someone's still fighting, they're like, I don't think I do. We're telling you have them. Okay. So the first step is going, okay, and being willing to say, yes, I have them. I may not know what they are. And then the second is to start to, I guess, become aware of them, or start to become curious about it. And what I love the way you described it is that it's really a habit and or a skill to develop. Yeah. Because once we learn to constantly question, like, why did I say that? Why do I feel this way? It's not like we just discover the answer right away. It becomes a back and forth with ourselves of continually being willing to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the greatest gift anybody can give themselves, is the gift of curiosity.
Yeah. Because
then you can truly understand why am I doing what I'm doing?
Right.
Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this what I truly want? Or is this because this is what somebody else wanted for me? And when we have the ability to get to that level, then we truly have the ability to create the life that we want and step into everything that we desire in our lives that's going to be fulfilling for us and not fulfilling for other people.
Right. Because otherwise we get stuck in that's just what you do. Whatever that means, right? That's what you do. Like you said, I checked all the boxes. Somewhere, someone down the line was telling or feeding us, that these are the things you do. And when you get there, you arrive at happiness, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of us are going there and going like, wait a minute, it doesn't feel any different, or there's something else. But that guilt, like, but shouldn't I feel? That's the other, I think
that's it right there, right?
The should, when you should yourself. And I shouldn't I feel like happy now, and all those things. So that's a big, I think, a huge key as well. So if we're getting there, we're learning, like, I got to stay curious. One of the other things that you've talked about is the traumas. And I think that's a word that's scary for a lot of people. Oh, yeah. Or defensive for a lot of people, because they feel bigger. And I know I've heard a psychologist describe that traumas can really be anything that switches our thinking. Like he described one, we had a guest on our show, and he described it, a relative who was just told as a young aspiring artist that her drawing weren't very good, and she just stopped drawing from then on. And he was like, that for her was a trauma, and she was now like 82 and had never drawn again. She had this life dream of wanting to like write children's books and never did, because she believed from that moment on that she wasn't good at it. And so but I think that, again, that word trauma, like somebody feels like it has to be the big ones, right? The ones that we know can be there. But stepping back from that description in general, just I know that that's also something that looking at these limiting beliefs that we're supposed to kind of go back and identify. How do we go about that and dealing with those?
The traumas and the experiences.
Yeah, like if we're just to learn from them. I think that's the one that people are like, well, okay, I can learn from this negative situation, but my trauma, that is, that's how can I just turn that into something else? How can I grow from that?
Yeah. The key, trauma is, and I agree with the psychologist, trauma is just an experience that you've been through that has caused some kind of negative emotion. They also describe abuse as anything that has diminished your self-esteem. So if we can start to look at things in those very light ways and shift what our thinking around is the description of that opens up complete other possibilities. Now, if it's the heavy trauma, so if it's the death of a child, if it's the Boston Marathon, those are the things that really will have the tightest grip on you, the strongest hold, because those are the things you don't want to look at. Right? Because I experienced that trauma, and we place ourselves in this position of having experienced because of somebody or something else. And then when we do that, it doesn't give us really any power within the situation to shift our thinking around it. And that's where I pull in this, okay, so what if, right? What if you created or were in that situation because there was something that you wanted to experience in order to learn? What could that have possibly been? So you have to start looking at it from a little bit different angle. What we tend to do is just get caught in the trauma of it. We get caught in the emotion of it and then don't have the ability to see it from any other perspective.
Right.
So if we take those heavy descriptions off, the heavy words, and just think about it, okay, what are the experiences that I had in my life? What are the things that I remember? What are the memories or thoughts that just keep popping up? It's amazing to me. I'll have conversations with my clients and they go, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that last week. That's because it came up for a reason. So if there's something that this memory pops up, or I had a dream about this, those are all things communicating with you, saying, please look at me, please address me, please have an awareness around this, because there's something amazing that you could pull from it in order to release its power over you.
That comes back to that curiosity and making that habit, right? Like, why did I have that dream? What is that? So it's really, I'm just, that theme has keep coming through here. Like, you guys, we got to stay curious. And because one of the questions I had here was, how do we start to release these? If we've identified that, we go, okay, I have limiting beliefs. I can be aware of them. Maybe I'm not. We've already discussed if we're not aware of them, how we can start to become. If you are aware of them, you're like, no, like, yeah, I know that, this is what I think relationships are supposed to look like. And I don't want to believe that. I just keep coming up against that wall.
Yeah.
What is that process for us to start to undo that? I know this is kind of where we get into like the subconscious, like reprogramming and that kind of stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah. So this is really kind of where quantum physics meets spirituality, right? So here's kind of the process that I walk through and then I help other people walk through. It's really, first you need to create a gap in thoughts. Okay. We have busy minds. They're going all the time. They are a distractor, really. So if we have the ability, or once we understand that all we're doing is creating a gap in a thought, you have the ability to tap into the inner knowing and intuition that sits within you to be able to understand maybe more precisely what those limiting beliefs are, simply by asking questions. Now, when I say create gaps in thoughts, it could look like a couple of things. One is if you've ever had the experience of talking with somebody and you're trying to remember the actor's name. I can't remember it, right? Because your brain's doing this. Then you walk away and that brain settles for just a second and boom, it comes in. You're like, there it is, right? You created a gap in the thought, which allowed the intuition to come forward. It allowed that inner knowing to come forward. So if we're going to take that and make it intentional, Then we sit maybe in a meditative state. We take a few deep breaths. We focus our breath somewhere other than within our mind and just create these tiny gaps in thoughts, just these little blank spaces, these little openings, and then start to ask questions within. Now that I have an awareness in life, right? Now, if I can sit in a meditative space, kind of have my eyes closed, and I'm just creating these little gaps in thoughts. When I feel that little gap happen, maybe I ask a question. Maybe I go, okay, so where did that come from? Now, the key here is when something comes up, you honor it. I don't care what it is. You honor whatever comes up. It could be a stuffed animal when you were 3 and you're like, oh, I just made that up. No, you didn't. You didn't, right? Your imagination is the exact same thing as your intuition. So allow that and then get curious. Oh, why am I seeing the stuffed animal from when I was 3? Like, what does that mean? And then continue to get curious and ask those questions. Now, it will reveal things to you. And then in that moment when you go, you know what, that's not serving me anymore, because it's not. The things that served me when I'm 5 don't necessarily serve me now. So that's not serving me. I want to believe something different, right? So I'm sitting in this space and then I say, okay, I don't want to believe that anymore. I want to believe this. Trade it, shift it, right? And I'm working with the energy of the universe. Because there's this amazing energy, this consciousness that runs through everything. And that is the basis of everything. So when I understand that I have the ability to use that and say, no, that's not what I want. Let's shift it and change it. It shifts and changes in a moment. And when I say it's that spirituality meets quantum physics, you can immediately rewire your brain to think something different. They have proven and shown this. Right? Your DNA responds to the environment around it, and that environment around it is the emotional state and the belief systems that you have. So you start switching those things up and everything heals.
That's the epigenetics, guys, in case this is new and you're like, what is she talking about? That's the epigenetics. There's so much study behind this. Go check it out. Biology Believe, Bruce Lipton.
Yes, thank you.
Plenty of others out there. But this is real proven stuff about how, like she said, our DNA reacts to our environment. This is very, science. If you're like, whoa, is this sounding woo woo? There's I'm not against woo woo at all, but this is a huge science behind this as well. So
it is
being able to change it, and you're consciously making a decision to say, I'm recognizing I'm thinking this, and this is the difference. Is I think a lot of people stop at, I don't want to think that, and then they stop. As opposed to, I want to believe this instead, right? Like, what are we replacing it with?
That's just it.
Right? Yes. And then going, okay, I'm exchanging it out for this new belief. A lot of people, I don't want to think that. I want to think that. You're like, okay, but what do we think instead? And we do that with so many things in life. Well, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. Okay, well, what are you going to do instead? That's the next step that a lot of us are missing. And so, sorry, I just had to jump in there. No, that's the epigenetics.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. I always like to mention Bruce Lipton, and I love to bring that in because it is a science-backed study that really can show the power of our thoughts. So it kind of takes it out of this, oh, that's just woo-woo and meditation and all of those things into something that is scientifically proven.
And the immediacy of it, because that's the thing that I think that's the other, the limiting belief, if you will, that these things are going to take so long to undo. That, somehow we equate it like, well, if it was this long ago and I believed it for 10 years, it's going to take 15 to undo. We hear the jokes of like, that's years of therapy. But there are so many things that we can change immediately. It's just doing this conscious work. Like, I don't want to think that. I want to think this instead. And shifting that out. So that's a huge golden nugget, guys. If you're not, if you've zoned out at any part here like this, grab that. Because that is really just such a quick action step to start making these changes of these beliefs and these things that have been holding you back. So as we've gone through this, we kind of identified the limiting beliefs, how far back we can go, how quickly we can change it, how we can start to make it a habit really of changing all of these thoughts in this process, looking at traumas. And I love the idea of traumas because it's really, like you said, it doesn't really matter this severity. It's our choice and willingness to look at it and change. I think you even said like the words that we're using for it to take that power away, because we get to choose how to see that. It doesn't negate the severity of what actually happened to you. It's just choosing of how we're allowing it to affect us anymore. We've looked at the trauma. One thing I want to touch, or I have a question about just a little bit is, I think the limiting beliefs, we see that, we can see these things. Self-sabotage shows up in this as well. Oh, right. Yeah. In this whole process. And I think that's another thing that's really hard for people to understand. Like, I'm not going to do something against myself. I kind of mentioned in the beginning, like, I'm not afraid of success. Who's really afraid of success? Like, clearly I want it. So maybe if you have a couple minutes to go into just how that shows up and kind of is linked with all of this process as well.
Yeah. So self-sabotaging behavior and revenge. So there's two things that kind of fit within that, which I love to talk about. So self-sabotaging behavior are those times in which you really feel like you're putting your best foot forward. I'm doing everything that I possibly can, but then something happens, right? It could be just as a physical example, it could be I'm really, really great in sports. I'm really, really great at running. And I go to run a marathon that I've been looking forward to, and I'm doing all the things except for then I hurt myself, right? Or I miss my flight, just these little things that get in the way, and you think, oh, but that was just an accident. Right. Was it? Right? No, I don't believe that. I believe that we do things to get in our own way of stepping into our true power. And when we do that, that comes back to this underlying limiting belief of I'm not worthy of having it. I can't have it. Rich people are greedy, right? When you think about all of those little things, those nuggets of information that we have maybe picked up, we will sabotage ourselves from becoming the thing that we believe on the negative side. Right? So as opposed to, I can have all the wealth and abundance and everything that I desire, except for rich people are evil. Right. They're greedy. And you're like, wait, right? Even though consciously, I think, it's when those little nuggets come in, right? But that little nugget that sits in the subconscious mind, remember, is 95% versus your 5% conscious. So now if I'm trying to overcompensate for the rich people are greedy, right? With the, I really want abundance, who's going to win? Right. In the long run, this 95 is going to win. 95%. Right? Exactly. So if you can get those to match, right? When you can understand where that limitation is and you replace it out with, no, that's not accurate. That's not true. I can be wealthy. Rich people are amazing. Whatever you want that to be. Now you've got 100% going after the dream, 100% going after the goal without the things getting in the way. The other side to that is revenge. So, and this is one that people are always, why would I ever do that? Okay. Well, if you have been, say, the woman in the relationship and you've been the breadwinner, right, the whole time, and your spouse hasn't done as much maybe to bring, finances into the home, and you've decided to shift careers, but now all of a sudden you just can't seem to get yourself to where you were before. You just can't seem to get there. I go, okay, so why is that? Again, curiosity. It could be that out of revenge to him, you're keeping yourself small, so he has to step up. And we would never think about those things. We'd never think about, okay, because that again is protecting me. Right. So anything that could potentially be protecting me, because maybe I'm kind of resentful or upset. So it's that whole, well, screw you, like you go do it. It's a type of thing. And if that's happening, if you ever have those types of minuscule thoughts, if it pops in your head for a moment, you stop it and you go, whoa, all right, where's that coming from? And honor it. Do you see? Because those kinds of experiences can come in.
And they start to drive it. And I think I just love that you brought up, again, that 95%, that 5%, because someone's going to hear that, like the self-sabotage, and go, I'm not doing that. Where am I doing it? But that's because that 5% conscious part isn't walking around going, I don't want to make money. Of course it's not. It's the 95% that has had these beliefs. And I heard it described once with the self-sabotage that, a lot of times these processes at one point did serve us. Maybe there was a mean person who was a rich person that you developed this to protect yourself from that person, or I even heard Ken Honda, he does a wealth class with Mind Valley, and he was explaining that as a young kid, his uncle used to wear turtlenecks, and he was a really like mean like person, and so he started to equate turtlenecks with mean people. And he said like he was an adult and he would still have this like, ooh, this person has a turtleneck, and he was like, okay, starting to have to realize that he needs to undo this belief. But as a kid, that served him. Like, it kept him away from the mean uncle, and had a purpose. But it changes. We change, but we've held on to this this limiting belief or this self-sabotage. It becomes self-sabotaging. I think that's the thing, is that it wasn't always sabotaging us. It actually was doing something, right? And
absolutely.
But we're grown-ups, quote unquote, now, and we don't have that same need, and so it comes up and shows up to protect us when we actually don't want the protection. We want to make the money. We want to get to the goal.
Yes.
Right.
And that's exactly it. So it's to not shame the subconscious mind and think, oh my gosh, it's this evil thing that's getting in my way. Right. That served you in some way. It protected you from something, like you say, from the mean uncle or from the parent or from the bully at school. Right. It did something to protect you, and it just hasn't caught up with the truth of where you are now. It still thinks it has to protect you from that uncle. It still thinks it has to protect you from that bully.
And it's on autopilot because you're not doing anything to reprogram it. So it's just stuck there.
If you take that example of the gentleman with the turtlenecks and the uncle, right? If he were just to say, oh, I don't like people in turtlenecks because I think they're mean. Okay, I don't want that anymore. So let's shift it. Well, but the brain doesn't say, oh, I just don't like people in turtlenecks. You have to go, okay, so when did that start? When did I start not liking people in turtlenecks? And he was able to track it back to this uncle. And then you disassociate from that uncle, the turtlenecks, and it shifts everything forward, right? So it's going back to, okay, when did that serve me? Yeah. And how did that serve me? And I don't need that anymore. Right? Yeah. I know how to do all of those things to protect myself, to love myself, to be amazing without having to hold on to these beliefs. Yeah.
Well, and I love that you said in there too, was that we don't shame the subconscious. The subconscious is definitely something we want to be working with, because when it's doing 95% of the work, guys, this is not the enemy, right? We want it on our side. It is us, and it's doing most of the heavy lifting. But it is a part that we're ignoring. And I think if anything, that's maybe in the smallest nutshell of all these nuggets you brought up, of what this whole process is that 95% of it's on autopilot. But if we show back up and start to like dig into that and have that working for us and reacquaint ourselves with, hey, 95%, maybe I should understand what's going on in here. It's like having a closet full of amazing clothes, but you're only using the first thing you see as soon as you open. So this has been so amazing, Cari. Thank you so much for everything. Before my last question, can you please just tell everyone where to find you and what you have going on these days, how to get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I, on social media, I'm at Cari Rosno. That's where you can find me. My website is Cari Rosno, so I've made it very easy. Some of the things that I have coming up, I am beginning a challenge at the end of September to really help people dive into the truth of who they are. And so it's walking through some of these steps on creating awareness. What does that look like? What are some of the most common limiting beliefs? And then how do we navigate those in order to release them to truly step into our power? And what is it that these beliefs are really keeping us from? So I've got that challenge, which is coming up at the end of September. And then I'm in the process of completing an online course that gives people the ability to be able to navigate through this on their own. And then I also work with people one-on-one to really dive deep in this, expedient way to release the things, to tap the true desires, to really be able to step forward in life.
That is amazing. So there are lots of ways to get in touch, to work on these things. And I think you also have a couple of like some offers and things that people, to get started, they can do like a 15-minute process of unblocking and
So I've done a 15-minute meditation that I put out. Now it's a little bit different than other manifestation meditations. And the reason why is because when I navigate people through manifesting in a meditative state, I also ask them to get curious around the gaps, the holes, the things that they cannot see in the manifestation, because those are going to bring forward an awareness to some limiting beliefs that sit in there. So it's really kind of an active process in the manifesting so that you can step into creating that manifestation. And so that's an offering that I have. And then I also have a self-worth assessment. And the reason why I put that forward, my team and I developed it, was because what we find is the thing that limits us most, and really the thing that limits us most from stepping into this type of work, is understanding that we are worthy, that we are significant and important, and that we have the ability to put ourselves first. We navigate life, or maybe have in the past, where having to please everybody else and put everybody else first, and I will take care of myself later. And I think that is just the backwards way to do it. So this kind of starts to bring into an awareness too, where do you place your own value, your own worth? And then that can bring forward things for people to begin working with as well.
Yeah, I love that. The self-worth thing, man. I think there was so much nobility placed on this selflessness that it's depleted us. And
yes.
we forget that the value that we have, not only because, yes, we're amazing and all that, I love and believe all that, but if for us to actually truly care about others, we get the lessons by doing it for ourselves first.
Yes.
All right. And so that's amazing. I love all of this. Well, so for my last question, out of all these amazing things we've talked about so much, what would be the best way for someone to go, okay, I need to start this path? Besides showing up at your website and doing all of these things, you guys, the challenge, the meditation, the self-worth assessment, coaching, but for them to get started, like I'm going to get started as soon as I, finish this podcast. What can they do to begin this process of, recognizing these limiting beliefs and creating this process for change?
The greatest gift that people can give themselves as they begin on this path is to become present in a moment, so that they have the awareness that they need in order to see the things that lay before them. And in order to bring that presence, that awareness, you need to create the gaps in thoughts. Now, I say meditation, which generally can kind of freak people out. Oh, I don't have a half an hour. I don't have an hour. I'm not going to sit and do this thing for 20 minutes. No, sit and do 2 minutes. Sit and just breathe 5 times, but focus on your breath. Do something that takes you out of the hustle and the distraction of every day, that brings you into a space within you. And it could, like I say, it could just be taking 3 deep breaths, exhaling, but focusing that breath and following it in and out 3 times. That brings you present. It takes you out of the energy of the chaos and into this space. And if you continue to do that, you will begin to live your life from a place of presence, which will then really give you the ability to have an awareness around the things that are happening within your circumstances to bring forward those limiting beliefs.
That's huge. Guys, 2 minutes a day. That's all. As you're saying, I mean, at minimum, 2 minutes, you can start this process by just paying attention. And like we were saying before, it's really, you're developing a skill. This curiosity is really just, it's about developing a skill. And you start to go, that becomes the knee-jerk reaction. So I love that. Well, thank you so much, Cari, for being here, sharing all of this wisdom. I mean, really, you've given us so many golden nuggets. Is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners before we wrap up?
The one thing that I would say is you are way more powerful and you have so much more to offer than you are allowing yourself to believe. So wherever you believe you currently are, and as awesome as you think you currently are, expand that like 100-fold. We just do not really allow ourselves the opportunity to see how great and amazing we are. And so my goal in life is to really help women stop playing small and to step fully into exactly the authentic, amazing beings that they're meant to be.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. You guys make sure to get in touch with Cari. Again, that's at Cari Rosno on Facebook and Cari_Rosno on Instagram. Go get that tool to uncover your blocks and limiting beliefs in 15 minutes. Get your self-worth assessment, get the challenge, get the coaching, get it all. Because this is, we're not talking about, getting your house clean stuff. This is the life stuff. This is the finding joy. This is finding your power. This is, designing the life that you want, right? That's what this whole show is about. And these are the steps and the power you get for that. So go do that. Like I said, her website, CariRosno.com, learn how to work with her, create your own transformation. As always, you can connect with us at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk on Facebook and Instagram, and also learn more about our courses, workshops, and coaching to grow your business and create a life you love at Tanyamfk.com. So if you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, follow, and tap that bell now to be notified when our next one is up. And remember, your someday starts today. Make it the best. I'm Tanyamfk. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. You can catch us every week at 1 p.m. EST live on the My Design Life Show Facebook page and on YouTube at the Tanyamfk channel. See how the challenges go by following us on Facebook and Instagram at My Design Life Show and at Tanyamfk. Do you have a method, tip, or hack you'd like to share or explore? Submit to be a guest or suggest a topic by visiting mydesignlife.show.